What is going on, guys? Get123 here, back with part 9 of the Axial SCX10 2 build. Today, we are going to be focusing all on the body. So this is how it comes out of the box with all of its other parts. It has a few parts that need cut off of it and shaped and cut out. As you can see here, it is really dusty. It had been sitting for a little while. Big surprise there, I know. But anyways, what we need to do is cut out these areas around the tires so that the tires can actually fit and go onto the frame and all that good stuff. So just to start things out, I just wanted to give a little test cut in there to a random area because I'd never cut into this type of plastic before. And to be honest, it was actually a little bit more difficult and exhausting than I expected it to be. I started rounding this first corner here and I realized, well, there's no way we're actually going to make a clean cut here with all this loose flapping plastic in the way. So a lot of my technique here was taking out smaller shapes one at a time, because you can see as I cut further into this, I end up with a flap of plastic that kind of just ends up in the way. So as you'll probably see me do here, we'll cut off that big plastic flap, or maybe we won't. Yeah, here we go. Just cutting up the center of it to get that out of the way. And now that makes it a little bit easier to work in that area. So like I was saying, this was actually a little bit more difficult than I expected. Well, maybe difficult's not the right word. Maybe time-consuming is a better word. Because it's not that it was, you know, like really hard to do. It was just that you really needed to take your time. And on top of that, you got to apply some pressure to those scissors. So right here, I just wanted to show what the cut looks like. I know it's a little bit blurry, but you can see that it did leave us with a few jagged edges. That's where the sandpaper is going to come in. We're going to sand this here after cutting out the body. But here I should mention, guys, this isn't going to be the most exciting build video that you've ever seen from me. Basically, this took well over an hour to cut out this entire thing, and I've sped up all the footage, and I don't know, I thought about editing it down and cutting out a bunch of this part, but if any of you guys are trying to do your own build and you want to see all exactly what gets cut off and how somebody goes about doing it, I figure I'd leave the entire thing intact here for you guys. And there you can see me going back, doing a few clean-up snips, but you don't want to do too much of that. The sandpaper is really gonna do you right on cleaning up those jagged edges here. So basically, yeah, one piece at a time. The really difficult part is when you get to these curves here that you can see like in the fender that we're about to go into. Cutting over those curved edges gets kind of weird. It causes the plastic to flex, and luckily it doesn't break and crack on you, but still, you really got to line your cuts up and go slowly as you're cutting over those curved corners and whatnot, because it can get easy to get out of line and to end up, you know, cutting in the wrong area. So a lot of this is just have an attention to detail for it. Take your time. Don't rush this. And I even made a few mistakes here along the way, which you'll see at the end. But I don't know. Here I'm really wondering, should we skip over some of this footage? I think we should, because guess what? We still have like 8 more minutes of fast motion of me cutting out these random parts. Here you can see more like jagged edges, and I was kind of wondering, like, why does that look so terrible? You can see like some little thingies hanging off there. I did a little bit of investigating here, and I was like, wait a second, is there a film over top this entire plastic body? And as I would come to find out, there is a very thin plastic film over this entire thing, which I didn't really notice as I was getting started. So when those edges looked extra awful, I was kind of concerned. I was like, what did I do to this plastic? Turns out it was just the film lifting from the edges and making it look a lot worse than it was. So that film is all going to get peeled off at the very, very end. I left it on for now. It's all on the outside. There's no reason to really take it off until you're completely done with your build, unless you want to, but I mean, it's not on the inside, so you can still do the painting and everything and leave the film on. So here we have the one side done, and here is where I think I make a small first mistake, and I ended up taking a lot more time than what I needed to take. You'll see me making this cut right here, and this is about an inch too low. You can see that I'm kind of like giving it a front bumper there. Turns out that's not the right area for the cut. So you'll see at the end here when I go and I try to take this shell and put it on top of the chassis and everything. it doesn't really set and get into position properly, and I was kind of confused. I had to look at the directions in the book and examine, like, okay, where did I go wrong? What did I do that I wasn't supposed to do? Or I should say, what did I not do that I should have done? So let's just skip over this part. This part doesn't matter, because it's all wrong anyway. Alright, so here we are at the end of that long front cut, which is still not right. We're going to have to go back, but we didn't know that yet at the time of filming this, so I figured I would work my way around, start cutting into this next wheel well or fender area here. And oh, you get a nice little cameo by Xena here. The Xena Bean. She's a good little kitty, I gotta tell you. I gotta let you know it. She's a fantastic little kitty, but look at that! That's not a good kitty. Look what's in her mouth. That little rodent's trying to steal pieces of my plastic? I don't think so. No, actually not a big deal, but I didn't want her to get hurt. The edges of that plastic could be a little bit sharp, and I didn't want her getting any cuts in her mouth, so... Continuing on with the cuts here, guys. I know, not the most exciting video here, but up until now, I've been very extremely detailed with this build. I mean, I've shown really every single step along the way of the process, so I feel like to just skip over entire parts right now would not really make sense. I mean, we've already shown like 10 hours of this build. Why edit out massive portions of it now when I could show you guys the entire thing? By the way, I like how you can see Xander and Kevin back there with an electric fly swatter. Looks like a tennis racket. I wonder what they're using that for. But anyway, still more cutting here along the bottom. And I feel like this is actually the point where I should almost just like put in a music track here. Allow you guys to listen to some sick beats. I don't know. If I could go into any faster motion than this, I would go even faster, but this is the fastest speed up for some reason that my editing software allows. I don't know why they would limit it at this point here, because it's still very many minutes of footage, but it won't allow me to go any more high speed than this. So I think now we're getting back to the fourth and final fender. And so we're going to reach my confusion point here pretty soon where I think I'm almost done, and then I go to set it on the frame of the vehicle and it totally doesn't fit, and I'm just having like the biggest brain fart ever saying like, wait, this doesn't line up. What am I being trolled? What? So yeah, you get the idea. So here we've got another large section of plastic removed, and once again I see that there's some jagged, really unclean edges. Now I know I said that you could use sandpaper for all this, but if you see a glaringly large like bulge along your cut or something like super extra jagged, feel free to cut it up and or clean it up with your scissors, but be careful because it's easy to accidentally remove too much. And as you know, you can always cut off more, but once you cut off too much, you can't put any plastic back. So definitely do that at your own discretion. Take your time, as I keep saying. So here is another mistake, I'm pretty sure. In back, I'm making another incorrect cut. Luckily, I'm not cutting in too far, because as I was just saying, there would be no going back if I was cutting in too far. Luckily, I'm cutting not far enough in. I was giving this thing kind of like a back bumper, cutting along this light line that you can see, and I thought that was the right place to cut. It looks right, you know, that looks like a car to me, looks like a bumper, whatever, looks fine. Well, turns out that little bottom centimeter or so doesn't need to be there. Or not even doesn't need to be there, can't be there. It needs to be removed. So a tiny bit more cleanup here, and I think we're about to get to my confused, my state of confusion. We'll just call it that. All right, so here's where things get kind of funny. I'm so proud of this cutout. You know, I'm like, oh, check this out. We're done. We're ready to go. Time to bust out the rest of the vehicle and see how it fits down onto the thing. So, you know, even though it's not painted or anything yet, I wanted to get an idea of how it would look. So everything looks to be in tip-top shape, and I set her down, and you can see that the body doesn't want to get seated properly. You know, it should be coming in contact with 4 points, like 4 anchor points. You can see the front two right under the front hood there. And I'm like, why isn't this thing going down? It's just kind of shifting, sliding. It's not really snapping into any places here. Little do I know, those accidental bumpers that I left on the front and the back were directly in the way of allowing the body to come down and rest on the actual front bumper and the actual rear bumper. Talk about a brain fart. It's like, what am I doing leaving one attached to the body when there's already one attached to the frame? I don't know. Too many hours of doing this build must have been driving me a little nuts or something. So fast forward here a little bit. I take a look at the directions because I'm like, okay, all right, something's not right here. Examine this again. And after a minute, I'm like, oh. So now we make the actual cut where it should have gone the first time. And you can see that it is a lot higher up than what I had mine. And it's a weird place to be cutting. It's where a bunch of corners meet. You know, we're working in a three-way corner and the plastic is flexing. You know, it doesn't want to be cut. It's shaped, and to cut it, you need to get it pretty flat. So once again, tricky stuff to be cutting over those curves and corners and right down the center line here. But with enough precision, with enough patience, and all that good stuff, you know, eventually you're gonna end up with a finished product, right? At least that's the hope here. So of course, after fixing the front, we had to go to the back and do the same thing, once again working around awkward corners here. Doing our best to flex that plastic, and man, not an easy thing to do here. Probably one of the most tedious parts of the entire build, a little bit frustrating, not overly complicated, just mostly time consuming, like I said. Really examining my work here, because once you make these cuts, there's no going back. You want to make sure you're positive of what you're doing, so I was really taking my time. Making sure I wasn't making a super regrettable mistake, and sure enough, no, we're good. You can see my sheer look of concentration there. So skipping ahead a tiny bit more here, we are just about to remove that back piece of plastic that didn't need to be there, and it would have been easy to make a mistake here, because you can see that right behind the fender, it does initially drop down extra low, but then for the very back of the car, you can see that we need to cut up higher into it. So again, you know, I've said it a million times, take your time here, make sure you don't cut off anything that isn't supposed to be cut off, and after this, we get into the sanding of the body and the masking of the windows. So here's the finished product, though, as far as the cutting goes, but still a little bit more work to be done on it. So that's it for this part of this video, guys. This ended up being a little longer than I expected, so I will see you in part 10 of the Axial SCX10 2 build. Stay tuned for more videos in the future. Peace.